So my second reading is the second Treatsie of Government, Chapter 2 by John Locke. Hopefully it's a little more interesting. It's a little shorter. Also, it's fucking cold up here. It's probably like 60 degrees, but I'm freezing my freaking face off right now. So I'm dressed like it's like, I don't know. I feel like this is appropriate for 60 degrees, but all the other upstate people wear shorts and stuff when it's this cold. I don't know. Anyway, a second treatise of government, chapter 2. Let me zoom in a little. Okay. To understand political power at right and derive it from its original, we must consider what state all men are naturally in, and if it is a state of perfect freedom to order their actions and dispose of their possessions and persons as they think fit, within the bounds of the law of nature, without asking leave or depending upon the will of any other man. A state also of equality, wherein all the power and jurisdiction is reciprocal, no one having more than another, there being nothing more evident than that creatures of the same species and rank, promiscuously born to all the same advantages of nature, and the use of the same faculties, should also be equal one amongst another, without subordination or subjection, unless the Lord and Master of them all should by any manifest declaration of his will set one above another, and confer on him, by an evident and clear appointment, an undoubted right to dominion and sovereignty. This equality of men by nature, the judicious Hooker looks upon as so evident in itself and beyond all question that he makes it the foundation of that obligation to mutual love amongst men on which he builds the duty they owe one another, and from whence he derives the maxims of justice and charity. His words are, "The like natural inducement hath brought men to know that it is no less their duty to love one another's than themselves, foreseeing those things which are equal must needs all have one measure. If I cannot but wish to receive good, even as much at every man's hand as any man can wish unto his own soul, how should I look to have any part of my desire herein satisfied, unless myself to be carefully to satisfy the desire which is undoubtedly in other men, being of one and the same nature? To have anything offered them repugnant to this desire must needs in all respects grieve them as much as me, so that if I do harm I must look to suffer, there being no reason that others should shew greater measures of love to me than they have me shewed unto them. My desire, therefore, to be loved of my equals in nature as much as possible may be, imposeth upon me a natural duty of bearing to themward fully the like affection, and from which relation of equality between ourselves and them that are ourselves, which several rules and canons natural reason hath drawn from the direction of life, no man is ignorant." I don't know what this means. It's abbreviations and it seems to be in Latin. ECCL.POL.LIB.I. Although my interpretation is the platinum rule, which is treat others how you think they would like to be treated. And this could also be the golden rule, because it's treat others how you would like to be treated, because you're of the same nature. And you are made dotheth of the same clotheth and things. Okay. But though this be a state of liberty, yet it is not a state of license, Though man is in the state of having uncontrollable liberty to dispose of his person or possessions, yet he has not liberty to destroy himself, or so much as any creature in his possessions. But where some nobler use that is bare preservation calls for it, the state of nature has a law of nature to govern it, which obliges everyone, and reason, which is that law, teaches all mankind who will but consult it, that being all equal and independent, no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. For men being all the workmanship of one omnipotent and infinitely wise Maker, all the servants of one sovereign master, sent into the world by his order and about his business, they are his property, whose workmanship they are, made to last during his, and not one another's pleasure. And being furnished with like faculties, sharing all in one community of nature, they cannot be supposed to any such subordination among us that may authorize us to destroy one another, as if we were made for one another's uses, as the inferior ranks of creatures are for ours. Everyone, as he is bound to preserve himself and not to quit his station wilfully, so, by the like reason, when his own preservation comes not in competition, ought he, as much as he can, to preserve the rest of mankind, and may not, unless it to be justice to an offender, take away or impair the life of what tends to the preservation of life, the liberty, health, limb, or goods of another. So, we were created equally, and we should not kill other people. But we can kill lesser life forms. 7. And that all men may be restrained from invading others' rights and from doing hurt to one another, and the law of nature be observed, which willeth the peace and preservation of all mankind. The execution of the law of nature is in the state put into every man's hand, whereby everyone has a right to punish the transgressors of that law to such a degree as may hinder its violation. For the law of nature would, as all other laws that concern men in this world, be in vain if there were nobody that, in the state of nature, had a power to execute that law, and thereby preserve the innocent and restrain offenders. And if anyone in the state of nature may punish another for any evil he has done, every one may do so. For in the state of perfect equality, where naturally there is no superiority or jurisdiction of one over another, what any man may do in prosecution of the law, everyone must need to have a right to do it. So everyone has an equal right to punish people that break the natural law. 8. And thus in the state of nature, one man comes by a power over another, but yet no absolute or arbitrary power to use a criminal when he has got him in his hands according to the passionate hearts or boundless extravagancy of his own will, but only to retribute him so far as calm reason and conscience dictate what is the proportionate to his transgression, which is so much as many serve for reparation and restraint. For these two are the only reasons why one man lawfully do harm to another, which is that we call punishment. In transgressing of the law, the offender declares himself to live by another rule than that of reason and common equality, which is that measure God has set to the actions of men for their mutual security, and has so he becomes dangerous to mankind. The tie which is to secure them from injury and violence being slighted and broken by him, which being a trespass against the whole species, and the peace and safety of it, provided for by the law of nature, every man upon this score, by the right he hath to preserve mankind in general, may restrain, or where it is necessary, destroy things noxious to them, and so may bring such evil on any one who hath transgressed that law, and may make him repent the doing of it, and thereby deter him, as by example of others, from doing like mischief. And in this case, upon the ground, every man hath a right to punish the offender, and be executioner of the law of nature. I think that meant the same thing as the prior paragraph, although I'm sure there are subtle differences, which I'm not going to try and determine. 9. I doubt not, but this will seem a very strange doctrine to some men. But before they condemn it, I desire them to resolve me by what right any prince or state can put to death or punish an alien for any crime he commits in their country. 'Tis certain their laws, by virtue of any sanction they receive from the... I've never heard this word before. Promulgated? From the promulgated will of the legislative, reach not a stranger. They speak not to him, nor, if they did, he is bound to hearken them. I've never heard that word either. The legislative authority by which they are in force over the subjects of the commonwealth hath no power over them. Those who have supreme power of making laws in England, France, or Holland are to an Indian, but like the rest of the world, men without authority. And therefore, if by law of nature every man hath not a power to punish offense against it, he soberly judges the case to require, I see not how the magistrates of any community can punish an alien of another country, since in reference to him they can have no more power than what every man naturally may have over another. So I think he's saying that you can't punish people that are not citizens of your country because they don't follow your laws. Although, can you punish them for breaking the laws of nature? Because before you said that you can. Everyone should be able to punish people for breaking the laws of nature. Not really sure. Besides the crime which consists in violating the law, of varying from the right rule of reason, whereby a man so far becomes degenerate and declares himself to quit the principles of human nature and to be a noxious creature, there is commonly injury done to some person or other, and some other man receives damage by his transgression, in which case he who hath received any damages has, besides the right of punishment common to him with other men, a particular right to seek reparation for him that has done it. And any other person who finds it just may also join with him that is injured and assist him in recovering from the offender so much as may make satisfaction for the harm he has suffered. So if you try to say, listen, I'm just not going to listen to the rules anymore so I can break them, people can still punish you. For these two, 11. From these two distinct rights, the one of punishing the crime for restraint and preventing the like offense, which right of punishing is everybody, the other taking reparation, which belongs only to the injured party. I didn't make a distinction between punishment and reparations, but there is one. Comes it to pass that the magistrate, who by being magistrate hath the common right of punishment put into his hands, can often, where the public good demands not the execution of the law, remit the punishment of criminal offenses by his own authority, but yet cannot remit the satisfaction due to any private man for the damage he has received. That he who has suffered the damages has a right to demand in his own name, and he alone can remit. The damnified person has the power of appropriating to himself the goods or service of the offender by right of self-preservation, as every man has a power to punish the crime, to prevent its being committed again, by the right he has of preserving all mankind, and doing all the reasonable things he can do in order to end that. And thus it is that every man in the state of nature has a power to kill a murder, both to deter others from doing the injury which no reparation can compensate, by the example of the punishment that attends it from everybody, and also to secure men from the attempts of a criminal who, having renounced reason, the common rule and measure God hath given to mankind, hath, by the unjust violence and slaughter he hath committed upon one, declared war against all of mankind, and therefore may be destroyed as a lion or a tiger, one of those wild savage beasts with whom men can have no society nor security. Okay, so here's a point of agreement that men cannot enter in contracts with animals. I have to do this for my assignment, so note that. And upon this grounded that the great law of nature, who sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. And Cain was so fully convinced that everyone had a right to destroy such a criminal, that after the murder of his brother he cries out, every one that findeth me shall slay me. So plain it was writ in the hearts of all mankind. 12. By the same reason, many a man in the state of nature punished the lesser breaches of the law. It will perhaps be demanded, with death? I answer, each transgression may be punished to the degree and with so much severity as will suffice to make it an ill bargain to the offender, to give him cause to repent, and terrify others from doing the like. Every offense that shall be committed in the state of nature may in the state of nature also be punished equally, as far forth as it may in commonwealth. For though it would be beside my present purpose to enter here into the particulars of the law of nature or its measure of punishment, yet it is clear there is such a law, and that too as intelligible and plain to a rational creature and a studier of the law as the positive laws of commonwealths, nay, possibly plainer, as much as reason is easier to be understood than fancies and intricate contrivances of man, following contrary and hidden interests put into word. So for truly are a great part of the municipal laws of countries, which are only so far right as they are founded on the law of nature, by which they are to be regulated and interpreted. So laws should be based on the law of nature, because they should be obvious to people. 13. To this strange doctrine, viz., I don't know what that means, that in the state of nature everyone has the executive power of the law of nature, I doubt not, but it will be objected that it is unreasonable for men to judge in their own cases, that self-love will make men partial to themselves and their friends, and on the other side, that ill nature, passion, and revenge will carry them too far in punishing others, and hence nothing but confusion and disorder will follow, and that therefore God hath certainly appointed government to restrain the partiality and violence of men. I easily grant that civil government is the proper remedy for the inconveniences of the state of nature, which must certainly be great where men may be judges in their own cases, since 'tis easy to be imagined that he who is so unjust as to do his brother an injury will scarce be so just as to condemn himself for it. But I shall desire those who make this objection to remember that the absolute monarchs are but men, and if the government is to be the remedy of those evils which necessarily follow from men's being judges in their own cases, the state of nature is therefore not to be endured. I desire to know what kind of government that is, and how much better it is than the state of nature, where one man commanding a multitude has the liberty to judge and be a judge in his own case, and may do all the subjects whatever he pleases without the least liberty, and to anyone to question or control those who execute pleasure, and in whatsoever he doth, whenever, whether led by reason, mistake, or passion, must be submitted to? Much better is the state of nature, wherein men are not bound to submit to the unjust will of others, and if he that judges amiss in his own any other case, he is answerable for it to the rest of mankind. So he thinks that there should be a government because people can be biased when they make up rules, but also the government can't just make up douchey rules because that's not really fair, and they should also be held accountable. 'Tis often asked as a mighty objection, where are, or ever were there, any men in such a state of nature? To which it may suffice as an answer at present, that since all princes and rulers of independent governments all throughout the world are in a state of nature, 'tis plain the world never was, nor ever will be, without numbers of men in that state. I have named of all governments of independent communities. There's a lot of trouble. I have named all governments, all governors of independent communities, whether they are or are not in league with others. For 'tis not every compact that puts an end to the state of nature between men, but only this one of agreeing together mutually to enter one community and make one body politic. Other promises and compacts men may make one with another and yet still be in the state of nature. The promises and bargains for truck, etc., between the two men in the desert island mentioned by foreign name Garcilaso de Vega in his history of Peru, or between a Swiss and Indian, and in the woods of America are abiding to them, though they are perfectly in a state of nature in reference to one another. For truth and keeping of faith belong to men as men, not as members of society. So, like, the people in one community agreed on their rules and they have a ruler. There's another community with different rules and a different ruler. The rulers are in states of nature because they don't really have some binding agreement with the other rulers. They only have it of the people in their own community. To those that say there were never any men in the state of nature, I will not only oppose the authority of judicious Hooker, ECL, Pol, Elib, El Sac 10. I don't know, this seems like some kind of Latin law. Who really cares? I.e., the laws of nature do bind men absolutely, even as they are men, although they have never any settled fellowship and never any solemn agreement amongst themselves what to do nor to do. But forasmuch as we are not by ourselves sufficient to furnish ourselves with competent store of things needful for such a life as our nature doth desire, a life fit for the dignity of man. Therefore, to supply those defects and imperfections which are in us, a living single and solely by ourselves, we are naturally induced to seek some communion and fellowship with others. This was the cause of men's uniting themselves at first in politic societies. But I moreover affirm that all men are naturally in that state, and remain so till by their own consents they make themselves members of some politic society. And I doubt not, in the sequel of this discourse, to make it very clear. I'm done. Oh my god. So this guy is more saying that people are like not douchebags and they have kind of a common understanding, but sometimes they can be biased for their own feelings or whatever. They can be biased towards themselves, so then they make a government, make laws, and that was much quicker.